All right. Hello, everybody, to this fourth episode of the second season of the Sacred Sister podcast. And today we're so excited to explore how to unlock our healing powers together with our featured guest, Jennifer Cabot, who is a Reiki Master, a soul-centered life coach, and a medium. So, hello, Jennifer.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, so before we dive in, or actually let's dive in right away. um, how did it start for you? Tell us who you are,
Yeah.
where did you grow up, and how did the whole healing journey start for you?
Beautiful. No, I love that question. So for me, actually, I took a really sort of traditional route and I became a licensed social worker. And I was a school counselor on this itty bitty island that was 12 miles off the coast of Maine. And at that time, I was probably early 20s. And it was this sort of thing where I would show up, at the school and I would get a download of information about who was going to show up and under what conditions and what their needs were. And I was still under the paradigm of, well, doesn't everybody get this information? Like, doesn't everybody just know, stuff about other people? And, it was also a really interesting sort of time for me in terms of learning about caretaking and how that actually was not serving me. I really truly believe that it was part of my responsibility to carry all the systems, right? That it was just my job because I was the light worker. I was the compassionate one. I was the one with all the information. So why not just carry it all? So I quickly burnt out. So that did not work for me. and actually it was, I guess, sort of the prelude really to my catalyst of waking up and sort of my emotional death. But my former husband at the time had a session with an intuitive, with a soul reader. And my energy came through and she was like, I've got some information for her. And I was super excited. My ego was all like, yeah, tell me about me. Tell me how fabulous I am. Like, I want to know all the juicy stuff. And she planted this little seed about Reiki. And she's like, have you ever considered Reiki? And at that time, I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I have no idea what that is. And, she informed me that I came through in a past life serving as an understudy for Dr. Yusui. So she's like, if it resonates with you, reach out to me when you're ready. Was not ready, but my ego was totally inflated and really excited about all the juicy stuff about me. So through, it was probably a good 2 years before I resigned from the school counseling position and really experienced my emotional death through the divorce from my former husband. And at that point, everything inside of me knew, like, it's time. And I felt myself stand taller than I ever have before. And I connected with that soul reader. She, Marianne Russell, she's my Reiki Master. And, my journey with becoming a Reiki Master was really expedited. It was like a 4-month sort of journey. And there were definite moments where I wanted to bypass. I did not want to do the work. I wanted it to be easy and beautiful and romantic, and it was gritty and ugly. And I fell apart. I really did. But it was beautiful too, because through that, I also kept hearing this voice of, I want, or I need more. And so I found myself earning my master's in spiritual psychology from the University of Santa Monica. And I know the connection is everywhere, right?
Well, I don't mean to interrupt, but I've actually been looking over that program for about 4 months and really curious about it. So I love that you just mentioned it. We have a lot to talk about later.
Yeah. And so for me, because when I went into Reiki, I was so the Virgo in me is like, everything needs to be in a pretty little box and we need to be able to have a checklist and we need it to be organized. And it wasn't that at all. It was like, signing up to be a Reiki Master and then signing up to actually do my soul's work, right? To clear out myself as the conduit. So I really, truly could hold people in space, right? In their pain. really meant coming undone. And it really meant sort of surrendering this really romanticized sort of idea as to what it was going to look like, and actually own that maybe it was more like an umbrella that I was holding in all of these skills and tools. So there's the social worker, there's sort of the spiritual psychologist, there's the Reiki Master, the medium was really coming through. And so I just sort of decided to let them all marry each other and just do their own groove, because clearly I did not know how to manage them. And so that's sort of been my evolution, or my connection with this healing journey, is really discovering and rediscovering who I am through these different modalities. And I really fell in love with myself through the process of Reiki, like really truly learned how to mother myself. I really learned how to just be with myself when I was ugly and undone, which turns out vulnerability is really sexy, right? Like it's kind of a cool thing. Everyone's doing it. So for me, it was just really endearing to just give myself the space to be in pain and know that I was still growing and evolving. So that's sort of, in a nutshell, I guess, my journey as to where I am now.
Wow. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, of course.
I really love everything at the tail end there that you said about this modality presenting itself as a way for you to, it sounds like, come to know yourself more fully, and your aches and pains, getting raw and vulnerable with yourself. I feel like I really want to honor you in this moment and thank you for coming on and carving time out of your day to speak with us. For myself, as a self-study entrepreneur, I think it is so important to be opening up this really vulnerable dialogue and sharing that, you know, it's not always sunshine and rainbows, and that like the deepest medicine can be found inside of your own human experiences that you feel hardship or challenge from the past. And I just really want to thank you for sharing that. I think sometimes we can be very outwardly focused and trying to draw the things in and whatnot, but really slowing the conversation down to saying, like, what's the aversion that keeps you from sitting in stillness, and really asking the hard questions can be a really potent teacher.
Absolutely. And actually finding beauty in the shadow, right? That we actually can't have the light without the shadow. And I really struggled with coming to terms with that. I really wanted that to be dispelled and to not be the truth. And so, because I had casted myself away as unlovable for so many years and had plenty of proof for that, right? So much betrayal and so much pain. So it's really been a pretty sobering experience for me to actually welcome in the energy of Reiki, so that I can really truly sit with the preciousness that I am and my core essence of joy, which I exude, and I'm super playful. And so you know, I'm not sitting on top of a mountain with all of my things figured out, turns out, you know, like there's still moments that bring me to my knees, and other moments where I'm like, whoa, like this is actually my life. And it's okay for me to say I feel good, and I'm doing work that's really, really gritty and super uncomfortable.
Yes, I love that. I love that you say all this, because this is literally our main message of the Sacred Sister podcast is there is light and there is dark, and both are amazing and both are ugly, and you know, it can be too much light, it can be too much dark, and it's really finding like your unique way of dealing with both of them, and just like, you know, finding that way, finding that flow and the dance between the two. So
and understanding that everything's not just going to be one thing, like being able to really hold our dynamicism as human beings and saying, okay, well, even if these chakras are balanced right now, these other ones are imbalanced, but over so many different avenues. Like there are just so many different aspects to our lives that it's so helpful if you start learning systems with how to map them and how to look at them and how to acknowledge them and how to heal them, because all of it's in flux and flow all the time, and it's never going to be too much of one thing for that long.
No. And actually, like, even when you say the word, so when you said the phrase heal them, right? When I tune into that, I'm like, whoo, that is so heavy, because it's like on paper, we're like, yeah, we're going to do this thing called healing. We're going to check it off and we're going to scratch it out.
And that's it.
And that's it, right? We're moving on, right? Like, and the truth is, I mean, healing is the continual sort of process of applying love to the places inside that are hurting. And it doesn't even mean that you need to go digging around for the hurt, but because we're humans having a soul experience, right? Like, so at the end of the day, it's like there's things that have come in for karma. There's things that, because of choices that we've made, we actually create new karma for ourselves. I mean, for me, it's like the gift is just being awake enough to call it. Whether or not I can check off that box that it's been healed, I mean, sure, great. That would be really yummy. But damn, like, just being able to sit with it and to like open up sort of the curtain and just have that moment of like, okay, I just made that decision. Like, I just chose with my free will to create more mayhem for myself. What's going on? Like, that's where really all the juice is. Like, that's the fun. That's the vibrancy. Instead of just getting to that end goal of like, there, I'm healed. It's like, it's sort of the relearning. It's the remembering who we are, and, really supporting ourselves and understanding boundaries. Like, what does it mean to have a boundary? Like, to truly, truly connect with personal integrity. Like, what does that even mean? Because that ultimately, like, that's the gateway to healing, or personal freedom, to peace, really. So it's, to heal, it's really loaded. That's a big one, but it's...
Yeah. So I'm curious if we can actually dive deeper into this, because I think I love the perspective that you're bringing, and I just love to open dialogue on this more. So when you were saying about healing being such a mixed bag and having the awareness to pull back the curtains, for me, in the very beginning phases and throughout, having that awareness for me is little pieces of that medicinal healing, because you're being willing to see it in a different way. So I always like to think of healing as like a spiral, the way that I forget how you said it, but the opening, the never-ending process. But I love how you mentioned the karmic perspective, or like how karma draws into it as well, because in the very beginning, the things that I would approach and I would gain awareness over and be like, okay, cool, now I know this about myself, and I know why I do it, and I know what triggers me to do it, so what is there to learn from this? And then I sit with it and do moon ceremony or whatever it is, and then I think that's I'm healed. To check the box, do the party, do the celebration, and then, like, as universe has it approaches to me in a totally different life avenue, looking completely different, often with different people, but the seed core of the thing is the same. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I thought that this was over. I thought that I learned it. And it seems like this is resonant for a lot of people that are on this like self-healing path, gaining awareness path. Can you speak to that at all?
Oh, absolutely. And, it's, I sort of call those moments or those people as stackers, right? It's like, so we're sort of conditioned to negotiate our happiness, right? Like, we're sort of conditioned to really welcome in pain and suffering, because we feel like that's part of the human experience that really deserves this giant platform. And it's amazing to me how it's incredibly uncomfortable for us to pivot into a space of what can we do to further cultivate joy in our lives. It's like we don't even know what to do with that part of ourselves that's so big and expanded. And so part of like these sort of life experiences that we have, it's all by design, right? There's going to be triggers and stackers and challenges and situations to continue to support us in, as you call it, sort of the spiral. It's like you got to spiral down to sort of gain a little bit of momentum, a little bit of awareness, so that you have context for what it is that you're actually negotiating and navigating. It's really hard to understand that like you've healed a part of yourself or a part of your story or attachment to pain if you don't now have a new context, a new vehicle that it's showing up in, where you get to then gently say like, no, thank you, right? That's the boundary piece. That's the personal integrity piece. However, if it's still hooking you and you're like, this is really sexy and I just want to be in this space because it's super comfortable, right? That's just information for you that your school's in session, right? That you still have work to do. And I feel like where we get hooked is that we attach shame to that process, right? Then we start coming at ourselves from a place of like, well, I should be further along because I just completed my yoga certification, became a Reiki Master. I just got my master's in, spiritual psychology. It's like, no, because we're all a part of this game. We're all pawns, right? We're all using life to our advantage to really sort of up level to the best of our ability, while we're also negotiating whether or not we can increase our cap or our threshold for joy. And so in other words, if you actually put it on a spectrum, so it's not a linear thing, it's actually this spectrum of like navigating our masculine selves, our feminine selves, we're moving forward with goals, we're also sort of climbing up the soul ladder, we're ascending. I mean, there's just a lot that's like recalibrating all the time. So our ask is to actually let go of what we think healing looks like and just sort of be in the flow of the process. Because you'll know what it feels like before you'll see it.
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing. I love how you also mentioned that life is a game, and that all this stuff, all the pain and all these unhealed things are not, are part of the process. If we were completely healed, like life is boring.
So boring. We need contrast. Yeah.
And it's interesting too with astrology. Every one of us has a Chiron in their chart, and the Chiron is the asteroid that kind of symbolizes our wounds that we've come here to heal, and it's going to be there for our whole life, and it's just like literally shedding more and more layers and like really going into that wound and allowing it to like really discover and explore, and then helping people in turn to heal their wounds through the exploration, through what we have discovered. And I love how Rumi says the wound is where the light enters. And this is, I feel like, so much with the healing powers too. Part of the unlocking our healing powers is literally like some sort of wound, just as you were saying you were going for an emotional death. Like we have to, like in order to unlock our healing powers, we have to feel some sort of wound. We have to dig in. We have to stop staying on the surface, shallow level of living, and we have to dive deep into the uncomfortable, chaotic stuff that's going on inside of us.
Oh, absolutely. And sort of like on that same thread of unlocking sort of the healer within, that's all about just acknowledging, right? So it's showing up from a place of being so authentic and so genuine that you start using language as I know and I am. Like it's when you truly unlock yourself, when you really identify with that part that you do know, exactly what you need to thrive. And we all know exactly what we need to feel good. It's just uncomfortable sometimes to commit to ourselves, right? And we are masters at distraction and sabotage, and and again, for me, I love the Virgo in me, but I'm like, damn, she can really analyze for a really long while, right? And she can project out a shit ton of like negative fantasies and worries and like I got that in the bag. Like, I know exactly what to do with that. And so for me, it's like unlocking the power within is actually shifting that energy into the space of assessing, right? It's shifting away from identifying and attaching to the pain and suffering of sort of the negative paradigm of what I was born into, but rather like really connecting with that part of me that says, I know and I am, right? It's just like rechanneling the energy so that it's propelling me forward in a space of authenticity where I'm so aligned, right? I'm so connected that then I can go outside of myself to get information from source or from my spiritual community and, you know, really sort of connect that way. But it's, you know, it's a big deal. It's a lot to keep motoring through and to trust that it's all on purpose for us. So.
Thank you. Yeah, we've been talking a lot about, you know, the healing powers, and we mentioned Reiki, and I just want to say, like, for those of the audience who hasn't heard of Reiki before or is not sure what Reiki is, can you just explain a little bit what it is about?
Sure. So Reiki is the least invasive form of healing, and it's actually the most ancient. And it has tremendous power to sort of heal on all the realms, so spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. It's incredibly feminine, incredibly soft. It's sort of the gentle laying on of hands. I actually like to relate it a lot to acupuncture in the sense that, you know, something is happening, but you're not quite sure what it is because there's no manipulation, right? It's like when you go in for a massage, you know, your muscles are going to get worked. And so the ego goes, okay, cool. Like, we know what to do with this. But Reiki, it's all about reinstating harmony and balance. And so it's a very nurturing sort of experience.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
In a nutshell.
In a nutshell. I know there's so much more.
And I just am so enjoying, like, in taking your insight and stuff too. You're just a really beautiful person. This is my first time speaking with you. I know that Hannah has been certified by you. Did you take her Reiki Master course? Okay.
Yeah. I got attuned by this beautiful soul.
Yeah, that is so beautiful. And I don't know whether Hannah has mentioned at all, but when did it start? Maybe like July or June. I got my first Reiki 1 level attunement. So I've been working on it as well. And I think we're going to go into it a little bit later as far as people practicing Reiki and having certifications and all that sort of stuff. But I was really curious to know what your childhood was like if you had reemerging feelings whenever you started feeling like you wanted to be looking into this path. You were saying that it was awakening. It was like coming to you and coming in very clearly to you. But I always love to know what people's past is like and whether it kind of tied you back to this like inner child that was like wildly imaginative and kind of always lived in this magical ethereal realm. So I don't know if you could share a little bit about your childhood with us.
So I would say my childhood was really intense. It was incredibly intense, and it was very emotionally unpredictable. And at best, it was incredibly cool. And so what I learned very, 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 very early on, probably even in utero, was how to be the practical psychologist. So in other words, I was really fabulous at tuning into people and really learning how to discern what it is that they needed to feel good and nurtured and to thrive. And that obviously came from sort of the dynamics within my family, right? So it emerged from a place of survival, and then it sort of it led me towards the place of career, truly. And at the time, I really thought that needed to exist under the context of something that was really political and tangible as a social worker. And very quickly realized that at the end of the day, people just needed hugs, and they just needed connection. Like, they just needed connection. Like, they didn't really care what advice or feedback I was offering, but what they loved was how they felt. And so for me, that was always the latch pin. That was always the place where I came home to. And so, with Reiki, I really learned quite quickly, actually, about the essence of having boundaries, and how to really sort of support people in navigating their own process without feeling responsible for having all of the answers or the ahas for them, but rather just holding them in such a space of compassion and love that they felt safe enough to really go within. So it's been a process to really sort of step away from that part of me that really wanted approval and love and kindness, and I really worked hard to earn that, which ultimately led me to pain and making decisions in relationships that led to betrayal from my former partners. So I decided to stop betraying myself and show up in a way that was more connective and endearing and compassionate for me, which then translated to others as emotional safety. So it's been a process to keep sort of reworking, those old, really young sort of munchkin wounds. But it's definitely been a part, right, of my journey of why I'm here in this capacity.
Thank you. I love how you say, always say about the boundaries, like really focusing on the boundaries and being aware of that. Because what I notice it a lot in the kind of light worker community, or like the spiritual community, as soon as people find out that they can help other people heal, or they find out about Reiki, they just say like, okay, free sessions, everyone, and message me for all these free sessions. And I remember when I got attuned to level 1, which was like 2015 or something. Like, I took my time until I became Reiki Master. But it was like, I remember we were learning that Dr. Usui, who was the founder of that specific energy healing method, he was actually saying how important it is to charge for Reiki. Because like he started doing, and you'd probably know the story as well. Like, he started giving all these homeless people, all these older people in his community who needed healing. He started giving them healing sessions for free. And he's like, I just want to give to others. I just want to be there and hold space and just heal. And then he starts noticing that each month, like, he did it like once a month or something like that. And like each month the same people came back and like, I need more healing. And so he realized he became a crutch for people to like lean on, and they actually didn't do the self-healing work on themselves, and they became dependent on him. And that's when he said, like, it is really important to charge for your sessions, in order for people to like say, I am really invested in that.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, no, I love that message. And I actually would take it even a step further. I don't ever want my clients to be codependent on me, right? Like, sure, I love them to pieces, and I love that they want to come in and sort of hang out and, receive. And there's always a tipping point for me where I'm really supporting them in becoming Reiki certified themselves, so that they can learn how to really, truly sit with themselves. Because I do not want people to be dependent on me for what it is that I know that they intuitively can sort of tune into for themselves. I'm definitely a strong advocate and believer in that sort of exchange that way, that there is tremendous value in healing. So Reiki, because it's so subtle, Right? It's more sort of the emotional and mental realm that it's really working with. It works on all the realms, but it's really sort of focusing in on that. And I find that kind of at large, we have a hard time valuing our emotional realm, right? Our emotionality is something that becomes dismissible. So it makes sense why some practitioners would show up feeling compelled to kind of give it away, and why people take it for granted. However, it's probably 95% of the base, right, of all physical ailments is an emotional sort of root that energy is collecting around. And so the Reiki goes in, dispels the energy so that the emotion can resolve. And so that's why it feels so good and juicy. And you often don't need to know, what is happening or why or the story. It's just, so it's like, yeah, there needs to be a currency in exchange for that, so that people continue to show up, because they do show up differently, if you're bartering a service versus charging. But yeah, I do find a lot of value in definitely, asking for people to show up in that way.
Yeah. Yeah, so those boundaries are so important. And another thing I wanted to share, it was that you touched on it too, that you basically just for really being that, holding space for others, you want to really focus on opening up that healing channel, and just literally just having it open. That's literally all we have to focus on, because all the other energy is going to move through whatever it needs to go into, whatever it needs to be. And I find myself sometimes thinking, like, even just last night, like my husband is feeling sick currently, and I was like, I felt a little bit resentful, because I was like, I want more support, I need more support right now. But I could also feel that it just came to me last night, like, I want to give him Reiki. And why haven't I given him Reiki for like weeks now, right? But it was like, because I was thinking I'm so stressed, or like I'm doing like a lot of things right now, and being a mompreneur, like a lot of stuff going on, and I'm just like happy to be done with the day and just have some time for myself, and I didn't spend so much time with my partner, and because I felt like it takes more energy from me. But what I realized last night, and that was not even the first time I'm realizing that, I'm like continuously realizing this, when I give Reiki, I receive it myself too. Because we're literally the channel, and it's not taking anything away from me. It's actually filling me up with so much love. So I gave it to him last night, and I was like, oh, this feels so good right now. And then he wakes up this morning, he's like, I feel better than ever. Like, my throat is not swelling anymore. Like, I feel so good. Thank you so much. And I'm like, we can like feel so stuck into like wanting or needing something from the other, thinking like, I can't give that to you because I don't have the energy for it, but not realizing that, hey, when we just give that, we are receiving at the same time as well.
And oftentimes it's just shifting the language around, because even with Reiki, it's like you're never actually giving, you're sharing. Right? It's like you're sharing that space, you're sharing that energy. The essence of Reiki is love. And so I love actually that you really had to work your process around that, right? Because it wasn't just about like connecting with him, it was reconnecting with source. It was reconnecting, with yourself, that part of you that was like resistant to receiving love. And so I love that. I love that you showed up that way, but it's true. It's tough.
It's like, for me, I'm like, sometimes get resentful thinking like he should do this on his own,
Sure.
Like, I do my work, he's gonna do his. But then I also realized, like, hey, I have, I am this channel, and like I am able to help him channel that for himself as well, through that, and be that connection. And I think a lot of times, like in a partnership, there is, we as women can receive the divine masculine through the man, and the man can receive the divine feminine through the woman. And I mean, we all have divine masculine and feminine within us as well, but even just through mostly men being more active and more physical and women being more reflective and spiritual, like if you just look at it from a very, very general perspective. But that's like a way that we can connect with through these different powers as well. And I was like, yeah, it's just funny to me how I have to like regularly like catch myself and be like, no, it's okay to share the space with him and to allow him to feel that love and not needing him to do all that stuff on his own.
Yeah. And actually, if you're open, Lovey, there's a really strong message coming in around giving yourself permission to actually be the wave, to be the, like, even in the moment where you're nurturing and sharing and giving, you're still the very feminine wave, right? That's sort of crashing up onto him. And so if you see it as that sort of beautiful dance that way, it takes the pressure off of that paradigm of what else do they need from me. And it really supports you in staying in that space of service that you're so aligned with. So yeah, it's really beautiful.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely feel that way.
Good.
And it seems like for so many of our partners, they wouldn't have access, not have access, but have it readily in their spaces, or be encountering somebody that could have this gift to offer them. And this is another piece of why we've been placed in their lives as well.
Right. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So for anyone in our audience who maybe this is their very first time hearing about anything about Reiki, can you give a little oversight of how one performs Reiki on another, what it, kind of looks like from the outside, and all of that?
Sure. So Reiki, in essence, whether they're laying on a massage table or cozied up on the floor, so Reiki works with main chakra points. And so it's the gentle laying on of hands, moving down from the crown, down to the end of the feet, and then moving back up. So there's nothing that really needs to be done besides truly having the intention of being open to receive. And at that point, it's the healer, or I kind of prefer to say the conduit, right? Because it's like we're actually not healing the person that we're working with. We're serving as the conduit to hold space and to really hold that energy. And so the energy from the conduit's channeling down through the crown into the heart and out the hands. And so the recipient probably at that point is going to feel tremendous amount of warmth from the conduit's hands, and it's just energy, right? And so because the essence of Reiki is love, and healing is the application of love to the places inside that are hurting. So it's just really juicy, very sweet, nurturing energy that's going into those chakra points to reinstate a sense of balance and harmony. So your payout, I call it, it's like a Reiki bliss. Like you get blissed out, like you get a session and you're like, you might feel a little drained, you might feel a little woozy and off, but there's definitely, there's a shift kind of in where your presence is. So it's very subtle. It's very, very, it's very gentle, right? It's very nurturing. So
I love how you just said love. Okay, how I want to say this again. This was amazing, this quote that you just said. Love is the, what did you say about the healing?
it's
No,
the
love,
essence of Reiki. Yeah.
love is the application. No, healing is the application. Here it is. Healing.
You got it, girl. You got it.
Healing is the application of love to the point, or to the parts that are hurting.
Yeah.
Healing is the application of love to the points that are hurting.
Yeah. Yeah. And the essence of Reiki is love. So it's like, you know, you're welcoming in that sweetness to those parts inside that are hurting. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay. So I just remembered this whenever you were speaking last, but years ago, probably 2015 and 2016, my mom had a lot of sores and wounds opening up on her, like her calves and her shins, and one specifically opened up right on at like the top of her shin, and it opened so wide that her tendon, you could see her tendon. And I don't even know that I knew I had heard the word Reiki before, but I would go and sit with my hands over her and just sometimes have my eyes closed, sometimes be looking at her, but she could feel the energy coming out of my hands, and it hurt her, like it was agitating to her tissue, I would imagine. And I'm just curious if you can speak on that a little, for one, but second, like what would happen, what do you think would happen if we had both continued with that work? Like, have you seen things where physical wounds and things are healed?
Yeah. No, thank you for that question, actually, Levy. So when I tune into that experience, the information that there's so much resistance for her around healing, and actually she feels as though she has a lot of self hatred, like a lot of self sort of abandonment stuff. So the idea that you came in as this bright beam of joy and love and light to offer her sweetness was so jarring for her that it was absolutely causing pain. And so was the wound on her left shin, the one that you worked with?
That's a really great question. I want to say it was on the left.
Yeah, it feels that way. So the left side of our body is our feminine, and the right side is our masculine. And so our feminine energy has everything to do with receiving, right? So my sense is that there was probably a significant imbalance for her. So in other words, the closer you were getting to really nurturing her, it was really pushing her threshold around self-love and being open, the emotional sort of threshold of coming undone.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so I was just going to say, so the distraction, the white noise for her was the physicality, right? It was easier to be like, no, I'm fine. It's just this, right? It's just this wound. So much about that experience for you, actually, it almost felt like gaslighting. You almost sort of started doubting yourself in sort of how you were showing up. But please hear that it was really nothing to do with you, and it had everything to do with where she was in her process.
Thank you for saying that. I know that for many years, both of my parents, at that time especially, were routinely sitting me down and having these interventions, telling me that I was involved in demonic practices and I didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I think it was, I love that you use the word jarring, because it was very jarring to my mother that she knew that I, hadn't dedicated my life to Christ as a born again Christian, and that she was physically feeling something that I was doing, and knowing that, I hadn't made that commitment that she, always really, really wanted me to make.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot.
I definitely just wanted to speak to that, because it's fitting and it's resonant and it's true for our family. And I think that opens up another avenue that we really wanted to discuss with you, which was about consensual Reiki. And this is a conversation that I've been seeing in a lot of Facebook groups as well. People opening up dialogue about whether or not you would ever send somebody Reiki that hasn't asked for it or that hasn't agreed to it. And before I share a story, I'd to gain your insight on that.
Yeah. Okay. So I have to say, inside of myself, I'm like, whoo, I've got a little bit of like some boiling happening, because for me, I am a strong believer in ethics, in keeping things really clean and really professional and clear. So here's the deal. If we can call it Reiki blasting, for lack of a better word, but if you're sending someone Reiki, or say you're at Whole Foods and you're walking by and you get this hit that someone's in a lot of pain, and you're like, I'm sending them Reiki, without their soul's permission, that automatically assumes that you know what's best for them. And it puts you in a position of power. It also strips them the right to their process. Because here's the deal, we don't know what it is they're attempting to learn. We don't know what it is that they're navigating. So I strongly feel we absolutely need their soul's permission. If they're not giving you verbal permission, before you send Reiki, you ask for permission. Because you also don't know if by you sending Reiki, if it's going to release some sort of emotional layer that they're not prepared to navigate yet. Right? So it's like putting us in this position of, we know what's better for them, and we just don't. We don't. So even when I'm in a healing session, I always ask my clients before I lay hands on what their intention is, what it is that they're hoping to gain, or what it is that they're seeking. So then I, as the Reiki Master, show up to support their intention 100%. Because I don't know what's best for them. Only they do. And I want to support them.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I'm definitely having some tears, because in that, I think it's important for me to share this, because I'm curious what your insight will be about it. So after the sores healed, and my mom's health was getting better in that way, she at the end of 2017 started admitting to herself this cancer diagnosis that had been diagnosed to her nearly like 8 years prior, and she just never had said cancer, the C word, to herself. And anytime anyone would refer to what she had as that, she was like, that's not what I have. And then at the beginning of 2018, she started admitting it and saying it out loud, and she was in a lot more pain, and she had 2 really rare types of cancer, a blood cancer and a bone marrow cancer. And they started talking about cancer treatment, and then it came to pass that she was going to have a bone marrow transplant, and that treatment was to begin at the end of November of last year. And on December 18th, after getting her stem cell transplant, and actually it's funny because I realized today that this episode is going to be released on December 18th as well. So December 18th is when she went to the ICU for the first time, and her health started really, really declining. Her cognitive function was all over the place. I never understood that chemo could affect someone in the ways that it was affecting my mom. And she was nonverbal for a lot of the time because she just couldn't connect the pieces and speak. And when my sister and I made an emergency trip out to her, she was in really, really, really bad shape. And the night that we arrived, my sister called me into the kitchen of the Airbnb that we were staying at, and she said, I really just feel like we need to sit and focus our attention on mom. And she started leading us into this guided meditation, which is very out of character for my sister, and leading us to create these balls of yellow glowing light, and that we sent them up and sent them to my mom. And my dad was the only person that was with her up until that point that we had come down there. So she didn't have the feminine, like yummy, lovey thing. Like my dad was in his own process, witnessing his wife that way, and just wanted to be very detail oriented with everything, writing notes and things. And my sister, and my mom's sister came down and brought the feminine, and my sister and I were practicing Reiki on her every day. And it hurt me, not it hurt me, but it was just hard to hear just now when you said we have no idea what their process is and what their soul's process is. And that triggered something in me that I thought, well, maybe it was a part of my mom's soul path to pass right after that first ICU visit. But then we fully believe, everyone in the family believes, that the love that we brought during that trip is what kept her alive for that next 2.5 weeks. And she had a last Christmas where the grandkids got to see her again. My husband got to see her again. My parents got to celebrate their 35-year wedding anniversary, and she got to see one more New Year. So I think it's a really different sort of strain of like experience with the consent, but I really just wanted to kind of open up on that, and I feel like it might be kind of a really independent sort of issue. Like maybe not a lot of people would run into this very often.
Yeah. So Lovey, thank you for sharing that, because I can feel, sort of also the questioning around feeling like you crossed a boundary and sort of wondering, my sense is that you did ask her for permission and she was available for that, right? Because you would have known, her soul would have turned herself from you. In other words, it would have bounced back. You would have known. So the permission was there.
I feel that way too.
Yeah. And it reads that way when I tune into that. She was really sort of open to that. And, please do. It's like, put people in the light. Place people in situations up in and ask for the highest good to be revealed. That's a really beautiful act of surrender, truly. And so it actually feels like tuning into that experience of the Reiki, it was really more for you to be able to ease into the knowing that she was transitioning. And it supported her in transitioning with grace.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think right before that all happened, it was a really beautiful thing, and I feel like Spirit was helping me to prepare for that transition as well, because Hannah's cat Goo passed like a week and a half before my mom passed, and witnessing Hannah go through this whole thing with her cat and sitting and doing Reiki with her cat as well, and helping
Miss Goo
Goo transition. It was really a beautiful thing for me to witness, and I know that happened for a reason, for me to really be able to witness like the beauty that could be held in that transition.
Yeah. And to really sort of gift yourself the process of being able to have all of those emotions and all of that energy without feeling responsible to do anything with it, right? Just to let it all come up. Yeah, love.
I also love that you just shared this, because this was before you actually got attuned to Reiki or learned anything about Reiki. And this is something that we want to talk about too, because we all have these powers within us, if we're officially attuned to it or not. I can feel it with my husband when he gives Reiki to me, or even my daughter now, she's 2 years old, and sees me giving Reiki to things, so she does that now too. And whenever I say, I just feel really like I have a headache right now, I'm like, I'm not feeling so good. Like, I'm like super open with her. I'm just sharing whatever.
Good.
and then she comes in and she's like, Mama, Reiki. And then and she does this with her hands. She's like rubbing her hands together and she does Reiki on me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I love you so much. It is
really sweet. Well, and that's sort of like, so when I offer certifications, it's really important to me that my students all hear the messaging around, Reiki isn't about giving you something new. It has everything to do with remembering who you are. That's all it is, right? And so it's like you're turning the light bulb on. You're turning the light up and on so that you can see. There's no wrong way to share love, right? There's no ill intent. So I love that. It's like, yeah, we all have that capacity. Reiki just sort of gives it the structure and the context to make it tangible and sort of the methodology, right? Through the attunement, it's like you get the direct lineage into that line of energy. So you access it with intention.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, right? It's like you can't mess it up. Even if you missed half of the chakra points and you're like, I'm out, I totally messed this up. It's like no, your spiritual community shows up, like your assigned ascending masters that are there with you in every session. It's why, like, when you work with clients or when you are the client and the practitioner is working, at your head, but you're like, but my feet are on fire, like, and I have pressure around my ankles, right? You feel different sensations because it's like, yeah, because we're not alone, right? And nor should we ever, lean into that faulty belief. It's like Reiki is all about reconnecting us with the universal aspect of love, right? Love with the capital L. Like that's what Reiki is. Like, you don't need permission, you don't need methods, you don't need any more information than just.
And I want to touch on that too, because I've always felt that way with like energy healing before I started my Reiki journey. And I remember one of my friends just said, hey, I'm going to do this Reiki level 1 certification. Do you want to do it with me? And I was just in this like, I don't know, in this way of like, yeah, let's do it. I had no idea what Reiki was. I was just like, let's go. And she was actually also the one that introduced me into like crystals, and she was the one that I did the moon ceremony for the first time with. So I was just like, yeah, let's do whatever. Yeah, I'm down. And so we got there, and at first I was like, getting attuned to healing, like how weird is that? Like, we are all like, we have healing energies within us. And so I had a little bit of doubts about it. And it was really fascinating because after the attunement, where the Reiki Master came in, and gave me the symbols and, all this like beautiful attunement process, my life changed. Like, it was just like, I could just feel suddenly my hands began to like vibrate and tingle, and a bunch of like other stuff came out. I had to cry. I had to like release a lot of things, and just really took some time for like deep integration. And I was like, oh wow, like you can actually like feel that. Like, this is legit. And this happened again after I got attuned with level 2, and it happened again after you attuned me for the Reiki Master. And it's literally, there's always like a time of integration that is afterwards so needed, because it does affect us, even though we have these healing powers within us naturally. But it does, yeah, like you said, like opening them up and like shining light onto them and really remembering these parts and these symbols of these ancient lineages. And it does activate new parts within ourselves that haven't been there before, and that have been there before but haven't been activated before. And it's fascinating.
Yeah, and I'm actually a really firm believer that if you're receiving Reiki in this lifetime, especially attunement, that you have had it before in a previous life. And so it's all a part of, it's like all of these experiences that we are having right now in this life are all designed to wake us up to who we are. And sometimes they're really gritty, right? Because we are that asleep. And yet, you know, and then there's Reiki, and it's like, it's so beautiful and it's so precious and it's so soft that it's really refreshing actually to have it be such a gentle awakening, right? I mean, the work around it, because it does loosen stuff up, right? That's sort of the purpose, is that when you become attuned, that everything just sort of gets flushed up and out so that you can hold more energy as the conduit. So, you know, for me, I'm such a firm believer in like, well, then be the student. Put yourself in front of mentors. Put yourself in front of information. Just do the work around that. Even if, you know, you're like, oh, I wonder what my astrology sign is. And then that leads you down to tarot cards. And that leads you to, you know, it's like, just keep, because you never know who you're supposed to meet along that path, or what that little nugget of information that's trying to come in that's going to help you make that aha connection, right? It's just like, just do it and then gather the information. Be the spiritual scientist. Play. You know, give yourself the space to just collect data and then assess, you know?
I love that. I love that you said play, especially the entire time you were saying that. I was like, just play, just play. I feel like sometimes, especially with as instantly gratifying as so much of our like modern reality is in this country, especially, so many people or so many of us want to know what the format is, what the map looks like, where it is that I'm supposed to go, and rather than leaning into their own intuitive nature and saying like, what is it that I'm interested in? What's striking curiosity inside of me, and using those as little nuggets of symbols and signs that lead you to the teacher, the workshop, the in-person experience, whatever it is. We want other people to give us those maps, and we want to know, like, you know, all the stuff from the outside, instead of rather like getting super curious and allowing ourselves to play and realizing this is a lifelong practice, a lifelong experience, and we don't need to be the enlightened master at the end of, you know, the second year of a spiritual awakening.
No, and so many of us too on that cusp. This is why I think it's so important for us to find our people, right? To like find our tribe, our community, even just one person that you get to lean into, because I mean, play is super significant, especially when you're facing, well, it can be really lonely to sort of do this work too, right? And it can get really uncomfortable and really scary, because most of us are actually taught that we're too much. Most of us are taught that we're too needy, we're too big, we're too da-da-da. And at the end of the day, it has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with their capacity for loving. But because we're so sensitive, and because we're such munchkins and we're so precious, right? It's like we want to love, and we want to be a part of this thing called life, and so we compromise aspects of ourselves. And so it's like, as we find things that support us in keeping our lights on, it's incredibly exhilarating and freeing, and it's scary as all get out, right? It's like, what, because we don't know what's around the bend. We don't know what's on the other side. If I do this Reiki thing, what does that mean for me? Like, what's on the other side of that, right? So it's like we have to simultaneously work with sort of the shadows, the pain, the lessons, the curiosity, and our capacity for growing in joy. It's like it's both. And so that's where really I find it's your people, it's your person, it's your mentor, it's those sort of communities that really support us in hitting the home run, truly.
I think so too. The first thing that I think of is you, Hannah.
Yes, me too. But she said that even just one person, I'm like, Brittany. Sacred sister, this is why we're here.
Yeah, and you know, I would just so love to recap, because I know that Hannah was calling in a friend. Hannah was calling in a sacred friendship. I was calling in people that I could like learn from, and people that had things to teach me, that were confident. I was super anxious at the time, and Hannah and I met at like a modeling job of a German musician, or no, magician one day. We were the stage helpers.
So good. So good.
And you know, and then I found out that she was teaching workshops at this spiritual center here in Vegas, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's so confident. Who is this person? So I signed up for all of her workshops, and we started doing moon ceremony together. She taught me all about tarot, and just so many initiations into so many things that my spirit yearned for, my spirit desired, and I didn't even know what they were before. But sometimes even, okay, I'll say this too, because we were saying about finding your tribe, finding your friend group. And I love using the calling in these people, asking that your eyes be opened, even if the word prayer doesn't resonate, waking up and saying, I have my eyes open to see someone that is being placed on my path that will show me something new or lead me someplace, you know, that my spirit desires to go to. And, you know, really allowing yourself to be vulnerable in those moments that you feel like you're coming across one of those people, striking up the first conversation with them, and, you know, not waiting to be sought after by other people. It takes a fair amount of vulnerability and work to like, to lean out and grab something that you don't have currently and that you would like and that you desire in your life.
Yeah.
And then even realizing that there is, like, you are already connected. You know, like even realizing that we are all connected already. So by tuning into like bringing that into us, but like allowing the space to come, the physical space to become closer, but the actual spiritual space, we're already connected.
See, and for me, I don't think that I could even anticipate, like I couldn't even hold space for that kind of thought before, like in the beginning steps of all this, like after seasons of knowing work together and feeling my energy shift and my spirit grow and everything be expanding, then I can look back on it and be like, oh, okay, we were meant to be. This was a meant to be experience. But I think just from my background that I have, being able to hold space for that sort of idea that like, oh, there are people out there that are meant to be on my path. You know, it's a harder thing for me to encapsulate.
Yeah, especially when those people bring a lot of pain and bring a lot of like, what just happened into your life? And it's really easy to be like, I'm out, like I'm done. Like,
yeah. Do not desire this.
This is a hard no, universe. Yeah. And, you know, and so because we're sharing from a place of vulnerability, and I feel like me being authentic, right? Because it has not been all rainbows and sunshine. And I recently went through another catalyst in April where a former partner violently took his life. And it was right after the kids and I left. And, you know, in the moment, everything inside me, I felt relief for him because I knew he was in pain, but I also felt tremendous pain for why didn't I see it, right? Why didn't I know? And from that point, because I lost compassion for myself, like this is how delicate this is, his family shifted into the space of actually pinning me with his suicide. Because why didn't I see it? With all of my gifts and insight, why didn't I know? And boy, I absolutely spent some time sort of cursing the skies. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is the lesson for self-compassion, is to have this community of people coming at me, right? And so it was another one of those really humbling moments where I really had to dig deep and really reconnect with my own God spark and really owned what I knew about me, which was that I loved the best way that I could, right? And I supported. And now I was navigating PTSD. And now I was navigating how to rest and repair so that I could then rise again. And it absolutely is a part of my story, a part of my capacity to really hold people, right? Because I really had to reconnect with compassion for myself and forgiveness. And it was intense. I have never, I mean, that really brought me to my knees, and I really was, what do I do? And so then it was like, okay, I know Reiki, right? Like, I know I can really sit with myself and just hold myself. It was me tuning into sort of the mediumship and really supporting my former partner in transitioning.
Yeah.
Because his precious spirit did not want to transition. He was angry. He was angry. And then he was regretful. And then when he was tuned into his family, he felt really protective, right? So I really had to support him in, like, it's okay. Like, you made this choice. And now I'm choosing to move forward. So I bless you in peace. And I bless you. So it's really interesting, right when we think we've got it all figured out, the things that can come in, right? And you were talking about that earlier, Brittany, like the things that come in and you're like, what? Like, I just worked through this, right? Like, so it's really, the work is designed to keep us awake. It's designed to be on purpose. It's not enough to say, I've got these credentials and I'm good, right? Like, I have all that I need for information. It's like, no, let's now actually put it into practice. Let's now actually get more information about where it is that we're going and why. So,
I was just going to say, when you were saying all of that, I was in my mind's eye seeing this whole table full of all these tools and having like Reiki in a jar and all the crystals and the outfits, and it's like you can wear all the garb and do all the things and have all the things and have all the cards and know all the stuff, but how do you use the tools? How do you use the tools? When you were sharing that, and thank you for sharing such a vulnerable piece of something that I'm sure is still present for you every day. I really love just slowing down this piece of the conversation, because when we say it's not all sunshine and rainbows, it's a really quick thing to say. But these are like the moments, like sitting in the darkness and sitting in the shadows and sitting in the sadness and sitting in the grief and the really, what a lot of people don't even allow themselves to feel because they're considered so low vibe. When we sit in those, it's the places that, we're not so much like posting on Instagram or, showing to other people, or a lot of us aren't talking about these really deep pieces of work and sitting with ourselves and loving ourselves. And it's such deep, it's like the moments that are so sacred that you can spend with yourself in this human experience that mean more than you could even ever really tell others about. Like you can sit with one another and really look into the eye of someone who's telling you a really sacred story and understand through your own experiences what this would have felt like. But I just wanted to touch on that, because sometimes I think it can, just saying it's not sunshine and rainbows, like this is the deepest work that I think that we can do as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's an energetic transference, right? With every grudge, with every ounce of resentment, with every ounce of why not me, there's an energetic transference that just kind of takes it down a notch. And so just honoring that we all have our process, right? So my former partner, his family, my instinct was to fight back energetically, right? Which at the end of the day caused me even more pain, because all I actually wanted to do was to hold them, because I just knew, I mean, grief is, it's fucked up, right? And people respond because they don't know what to do with all of that inside of them. And so, I had to really even sit with like, well, what do I do with that energy that I just want to hold them, when really I was really needing to hold myself, and I wanted a hug, right? Like I wanted someone to hold me. And so it's not cookie cutter, and it's not linear, and there's no how-to book, and I genuinely feel like if we were all sort of able to read a self-help book and cure ourselves, we all would have done that by now, right? And sometimes the books aren't enough. Sometimes you need a really dramatic life experience to put all these things together. So it's a process, not an event, right? And whether we get there through Reiki, whether again, we got there through becoming the practical psychologist, or becoming a teacher, a mentor, whatever that is, it's like, just say yes, like just show up and do it. Because the payout is, it's personal freedom, not just for you, but it's like the entire system that you're connected to has no choice but to up level.
I love that.
And it's like, why not? Why not?
And I love how you touched on the importance of doing that work continuously, and how there's on one hand the knowledge that we can gather through classes, workshops, books, teachers, and then on the other hand is the wisdom that only comes through experience, and wisdom takes time. It takes time to build up wisdom. It comes with experiencing life and going through different cycles, and this is something that I feel like is really important, especially nowadays, where we want such quick results, and we want to be like them, we want to get there right away and have to go and be the master in something. And I'm guilty of it too, because when I'm fascinated of something and inspired and passionate about something, I'm like, I want to be an expert at it right away. But I always have to like hold myself back and be like, hey, I can learn all the knowledge as fast as I can. Like if you're a fast learner and you're passionate about it and inspired, learn everything. Yes, dive deeply into it. But then allow yourself time to integrate that wisdom, to like turn the knowledge into actual wisdom. Because and this is what we're seeing a lot, I feel like now in the spiritual community, where all of this is becoming cool to do, astrology and tarot and Reiki and all these things, and so we have a lot of people that have the knowledge, but they don't have the wisdom around it. And this is where the integrity is missing, because then ultimately it's just the knowledge that you're giving. You received a certain knowledge and then you're just sharing that knowledge with others, but it's lacking the depth of wisdom. And the only way to experience the wisdom is to dive deeply into our life's experiences and allowing ourselves to feel. And oftentimes it is the shadow work that we need to do in order to gain that wisdom.
Shadow. Sing it, sister. Listen, that has been my commitment, and what you're speaking to is sort of the gift of being conscious, right? It's a choice to do the work. It's a choice to show up from a place that's really authentic and transparent. And that choice is, I've yet to see it be one that comes with comfort, right? Like maybe grace, and maybe it's a choice of grace, but it's because we don't know what that means, right? But it's a big deal. And I count my blessings that I was conscious enough to catch myself in that experience, to know that my ego was completely in survival mode. That was the saber-toothed tiger that I was going to fight, and I was prepared, right? But my soul and my heart were like, but wait, come back in here, right? Come back home, come home. And so it takes a lot. And without the context, if I was just studying grief and PTSD and all of that, like, there's nothing authentic about just studying, right? And we can call it, we've got bullshit meters. Like, we can call it out when someone is just sort of reporting out. So context is good. My prayer, I'm going to say this now, is that I ask for my lessons to now be with ease and grace. They really don't have to be so gritty. So my intention is to hold myself in love and light so that I can work my process with honesty and integrity. Mm-hmm. That's truly what I wish for, my clients and for the two of you precious munchkins. And it's like, I just, for us to hold ourselves in such a space that we are honest and we're connected to integrity. And from there, it's like we keep on and going.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I love being called a munchkin. It's not your first or second time saying it in this episode, and I'm just like, oh, it's such a cute word.
Me too.
It's funny. I often refer to my clients as like muffins, because I'm like, everybody's so precious. I just want to eat them, Oh, I can't help it.
I love how you were saying too about wanting the challenges to be like easier, like coming with ease and grace. And I like to look at life as a game, as almost like a video game or a computer game. Yeah. And you know how you can like go back into the settings and be like, you know what, like I've been having it on the hard like setting for a long time. Like I'm just gonna set it back to like the medium or to the easy one for a while.
Totally, it's totally where I am. And you know how the only reason why I can even do that is because I'm committed to working with my shadow. It's the only reason why that's even an option for me. Otherwise, it's like the universe is just responding to whatever I'm throwing out there energetically, my subconscious, right? Which has been grit and painful lessons in the matter of love. And so now I'm like, well, if I want to flip the switch, I really need to do this. But I love it. It's actually really beautiful in the shadow. There's a lot of creative, juicy energy in there. So it's been interesting for sure.
And I mean, everything is created out of the darkness, if you think about it, like the whole universe is the Big Bang. It's created from the darkness, and that's where the light always comes from,
And in the womb space too.
Yeah. Mother Goddess.
So good.
Wow, I love it. We're going so juicy into all of it.
It is so juicy.
So I had another question about doing energy healing through time and space. And there, among the community that I have seen as well, there is a suspicion, and I have to say I was skeptical too whenever I heard that my Reiki attunement was going to be through distance, like a distance attunement. And I think for a lot of people, this is something that's really, really hard to understand or, even imagine how it's possible. So can you speak on that a little?
I most certainly can. So in the context of like offering a healing session, because that feels different to me than doing attunement. So maybe I'll answer both questions. Okay, great. So typically with Reiki 2 is when you really start diving into using the symbols, right? And so Reiki is specific to, it's the only energy healing modality that has access to or utilizes Japanese symbols. If there's something else happening, it's not Reiki. So So with the attunement, you can, or Reiki 2 attunement, you then have sort of the right to be able to connect to people virtually. And I remember when I first started navigating distance healing, I had so much fun with this because you really sort of bust into your psychic ability. And I was just like, ooh, okay, now I get to play, and we'll call it Reiki, but it's really me just accepting my gifts and who I am, right? And so I had at the time this friend who was a photographer in Boston. And when we play these little games where I'd say, okay, at some point between 12 and 4 on this certain date, I'm going to send you Reiki, and let's just see what you feel. And every single time he would reach out and be like, dude, did you just hit me with something? Because like I'm super tingly right now and I don't know what's going on. And so for me, so those questionings around, is this legit, is all ego. Because remember, the ego wants for things to be black and white and yes and no. It does not like gray matter. Reiki is gray. It's all gray because it's all about intention. So 100%. I absolutely love doing distance healing sessions. And sometimes I actually prefer it because I can just tune into the energetics of what is exchanging versus if somebody's lying in front of me, like I'm tuned into like, are they comfortable? Are they, feeling a certain way? Like it's a different sensation. Do you have any other questions about the distance healing? Did that sort of answer for you kind of just yeah.
Oh, yeah, certainly. Yeah, I love that you, touched on the ego because that's
Oh.
usually what it comes down to with me, because I was really skeptical before I signed up for my first one. I was like, this is an online course. Am I really going to be getting anything out of it? And then, talking with certain people about it who don't have any experience with Reiki, asking the exact same questions that I was already asking myself, and, really asking whether this was going to be worth it for me, or is this legitimate, and all of those. Yeah. So thank you. It does come down to ego.
Oh yeah. Ego rules sometimes. Well, and in the same light of like the attunements, I would say like, so this is probably my first year, and I really put the prayer out there. I really put the ask out there that if I was meant to up level Reiki, right, and make it a little more modern and a little more accessible, what would that look like for me? And I received this beautiful download where it was like curriculum flowed, information came in. And I mean, and Hannah can speak to this too, right? Because you received, the mastership attunement. I actually feel it more intensely when it's virtual, which is a really interesting thing. But it's because I'm so expanded in my consciousness. It's a shift, right? It's just a complete shift in where I am, that it's as though they are there with me. So it's just this beautiful, endearing exchange too. But I definitely going into it, even when I was Reiki 1 certified, I remember first offering sessions and I would like check my hands and like, are these even on? Like, I don't even know if this is working. Like, my ego was like, what are we doing? This is woo-hoo, It was insane. But that was my process too, was to like analyze, make it tangible, because tangible meant it was safe. This land of gray for me was like, So it took me a little while to open up to it. But, when the calling is there, it can be really persistent in sort of how often it's knocking and how often it's saying like, hey, we have information for you. Are you ready to listen now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I'm so happy you listened to it. I'm so happy you answered the call, because for me it was also, I had my Reiki level 1 and Reiki level 2 in person, and it was like a really beautiful experience. It was like a full day kind of workshop. And then I was skeptical too, if that's even possible, going and doing it online. But then I was like, when I first met you, I knew that you're going to be, I knew it. As soon as I knew that you're a Reiki Master, I knew you're going to be the one attuning me to Reiki Master. I just knew it. And 6 months later, that was the case. And then, but the whole time I was like, I don't know how it's going to be happening, because I knew we don't live in the same states.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't know how that's going to be happening, but I know that you're going to achieve me as a Reiki master. And then I think I just wrote you and said, like, by the way, are you doing this online too? Or like, how does it work? And you're like, yes. And I think wasn't I the first one that you did online for the Reiki master?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was like really, it was such a divine calling from your side and from my side too, because then I was thinking, as much as I first was doubting it, if it works through online. And then I was like, well, this is literally how I work with my clients, is online. Yeah. Like, this is why this is so perfect. Like, of course, yeah, it's beautiful to get an in-person session and have in-person attunements. But for me, as someone who mostly works through the internet and through online, it is so important for me to dive into that and explore it and trust that it is working and it is real, just as real as if we were there in person. And I mean, you had visions of me, I had visions of you, like we were so connected, and it was just so much fun. And before, and this is funny too, before the session, there was a huge storm happening here in Vegas, and I was just like standing outside with my I want to say my top off, I would say, and I was just, I had my arms open. I'm like, I'm ready for my attunement.
Yeah.
and then I had like a little bit of water that I took from the rain. I was like, this is my magical storm that is coming. And I was drinking it during our session. And funny enough, before this interview, just last night, we had a huge storm. So whenever we connect, we have a huge storm coming here.
There's energy among us. That's for sure. Yeah.
Not afraid of a little rain.
So
from a Reiki 1, from a Reiki 1 perspective, and both of you might be like, we are not to talk of these things, but I'm very curious, because I had no idea what to expect during my first attunement. I was just super open to whatever was going to happen. I was here in my office space that is my magical portal, and during my attunement, at the like second half of it or so, this really, really epic picture of my soul family came in, and just witnessing everyone looking down on me with like these big, brilliant, beaming smiles, and like just feeling their presence so deeply that I normally don't, because I can't say that I meditate on, you know, really feeling all of their presence around me. So it was a very like one of a kind sort of feeling that I'm not very accustomed to feeling. But my question is, what is going on during the attunements? And like, what is it that you're sending us access or activation to, or anything that you can tell me about that? But if these are the behind closed doors things, that's okay.
No, that's a really great question. So what I can share, only because it's not that there's things that you can't know, right, about what's going on with the attunement, because it's not like hush hush secrecy sort of underground society, right? It's more so in that moment, so myself as the Reiki master and you as the student, our auras become one, right? We blend. And so in that moment, it's, you know, I'm opening up your crown chakra so that you're connecting up into the divine. You're getting access to really sweet sort of Japanese symbols that just fill you with so much juicy love and light. And actually, what happens during the attunement is that every single one of your chakras turns on, and you actually get flushed out, which is why oftentimes after the attunement, you kind of feel blissed out, right? You're kind of, whether that's a sensation of peace or you just feel balanced or uncontrollable crying. I couldn't stop smiling, and I wanted to like hug and eat everyone, because I was so like, I just have all this love, like my heart went poof, right? And so it's sort of that connection where you cannot deny, right? You just cannot deny how connected you are to the source of love. So, and then, you know, part of the attunement is that it all just gets anchored. It gets anchored in, so it's non-negotiable. And whether or not you actively use Reiki from that point forward, it's always a part of you. It's always there. You always have access to it. So, which I find to be quite beautiful too. Like, it doesn't actually go away. You know, it's on you to sort of discern what your process is. And so I feel like with Reiki 1, you do get assigned ascending Reiki masters. However, it's usually not until Reiki 2 that you really sort of you get introduced to them, where they actually sort of reveal themselves. But you know, besides that, it's just like this direct lineage, this connection to something that's much larger, and you cannot deny it, because now you have Jesus hands. Right now you're like hands on fire. And you're like, well, what do I do with these? Because they're hot and they're tingly, and like, whoa. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you for that. Jesus hands. We love our Jesus.
I don't know.
So fun.
Yeah, maybe there's another way to.
I would like to ask you something, because of, you know, we've been talking a lot about the healing process and connecting with our healing powers. What is like one of your favorite self-healing practices?
Oh, well, so that's kind of a loaded one for me, actually, because I dip in and out of leaning into Reiki. I mean, the Reiki is always there for me. For me, I am an uber manifester, so I spend a lot of time actually working with energetics around visualizing. And so for me, it's a lot about sort of connecting energetically with people all over the world by just noticing their lights turning on in their houses. And I really spend time kind of calling them in that way. That feels incredibly healing to me, because then I just feel so full, because I know that a big part of my soul's intention is to be in service, right? Is to be so available and present, to really hold people in compassion and nurturance, and to love on them. So that always feels good to me, to be able to kind of energetically go beyond where I am physically. And in a real sort of raw, tangible way, I'm training for a half marathon, and that feels so good to run those miles and to hit the gym and pump the weights. And right, like, I don't want it to always be so fluffy. I sometimes want it to be gritty and sweaty and like in my body. I have to be in my body to do my work. Otherwise, it's really hard for me to get the information and to discern what energy is coming in.
Wow,
good for you. Congratulations.
Thanks.
My sister-in-law did a marathon last year, and I know her training schedule, and I was just like, you have fun doing that.
Yeah.
So much.
Yeah. It's intense, and there's something really empowering about just grinding it out and letting it be really sweaty and ugly and full of swears and tantrums and all of that, right? Because it's you got to feed the machine, right? You got to feed it sort of the soul care. You got to take care of the energy. You got to take care of your body physically. It's your vessel. It's holding all of this together. So yeah, feed the machine.
I love that. I love that you touched on that, because it's so important to see the balance, you know, to have the fluffiness and then the sweatiness too.
Yeah. True. It's really true. I mean, it's my truth, and I'm like, yeah, that's part of it.
Yeah, so cool. Thank you. Is there something you want to say, Britt?
Who, me? No.
Oh. So since we were talking about, you know, the healing power and unlocking that in ourselves, so how So when someone is listening to this now and is like, hey, I feel ready, I want to dive into this, I want to connect with my inner healer, what advice would you give to that person?
Ooh, that's a loaded question, Lovey. So so I'm a really big fan, when you feel that sort of inner calling, and it can be overwhelming too, because there's so much information out there that it's hard sometimes to know which avenue. So that is the exact moment to sort of put out the request of show me, guide me, lead me to my next intelligent step forward, and really sort of surrender into the trust that what you are ready for in terms of, if it's a class, if it's a book, if it's, getting Reiki certified, sort of the master will reveal itself, and you'll know. And you'll know because you will feel ignited and expanded in your chest. You'll know if it's information that does not have resonance for you, because you will actually feel constricted. And you might actually feel that the energy is up more sort of in ego space. So you might feel a little flighty about it. So I really sort of strongly welcome people to, trust your vibes and ask yourself, what are my vibes telling me? Especially if you're contemplating, working with one Reiki master to another one, to doing an online thing. It's like really lean into what you're feeling versus what you're thinking is the right thing to do.
I love that you just mentioned about resonance. I recently saw that Teal Swan uploaded a new video on resonance, and how resonance is really just a movable, changeable piece of what we are feeling is truth for us in that moment or season of life. So it can change all the time, and I really just like that perspective, because sometimes whenever we hear resonance or non-resonance, it's like a label of either that's true or that's not true, like blanket term, universal truth or universal not truth. And I just like to add that, it's always a movable, changeable thing too.
Yeah.
It's not like an absolute thing.
And also I feel like with the resonance, when we feel resonant to something at this point, and this is what I saw Teal Swan's video too, and I loved how she mentioned that when we feel resonant to something, we always have to remember from what space are we coming from, because what vibe are we sending out? Because when we come from a vibe of even just vengeance, if we're on that vibe, certain tools or certain things might resonate with us that are not necessarily maybe not necessarily for our highest good, but at the same time it might be exactly what we need to experience in this game of life. So it's like it always goes both ways. Discernment is the key.
Well, and also I think just sort of acknowledging that we're never pinned. Like choosing doesn't mean that now we're pinned, right? It actually, decision can be just as fluid. Because if we're coming at it from the context of we're all spiritual scientists gathering information and learning and growing, right? Then it's like we make a decision. It's not good or bad. It's just information for us. It's what we sort of attach to it for stories that then cause pain and suffering. So, I love the energy of choosing, and I love the energy of course correct. I'm gonna actually pivot back a little bit this way, or I'm gonna renegotiate the terms that I've just agreed to. It's really important to give ourselves space to just kind of experience without such attachment to feeling responsible to outcome or what it has to mean on the other end.
To bring back in that play, right?
Yeah. I love playing.
Assess and then reassess.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So we are curious to touch on something that you're currently celebrating in your life.
Ooh. Yeah. Celebrating, let's see. Well, so a big thing for me actually is that I have decided to be all in. And part of that means, really like launching my online series, and it means being 100% beside and behind me in really just accepting my gifts and really sort of accepting the calling to serve. And so it's been a big climb for me these past 5 years in building my foundation. And, astrologically speaking, it's like everything is just sort of lining up and really sort of opening. So I'm celebrating me and my commitment to really mothering myself and doing my shadow work and saying yes to things that really serve me and gently sidestepping things that aren't really on point. That's big. It's a really big one for me to do me.
Yay.
Yeah, big for any of us, I feel like.
Yeah.
I've been hearing that from many different people in just around me currently, and I'm going through the same thing, just like really stepping into this like place of like authenticity and going all in. And I also just like while you were talking, I was like, I wonder if it's because we're all moving into the 4 year as well as a collective, which is the year of the Emperor, the year of like the leadership and just like showing up with our authority and with, just really owning our gifts.
Yeah,
absolutely. And same, congratulations on your online course. I'm talking to a production team right now because I'm going to be recording an online course here in the next week.
So exciting. Yeah, and it's it's both sort of, it's virtual, but it's also live, and it's, there's all those kinks that have to get worked out, but it's, it's to be connected with my creative genius. It's, what is that? It's like electric. I can't deny it. I'm like, I just want to keep connecting and keep serving and showing up. So it's good.
I love that. And we're going to be touching not deeper onto the specific offers that you have right at the end. And you also have a special gift for our listeners, which we're going to be touching on too. But I think we have a few more questions, right, Britt?
Yeah, so if that's what you're celebrating in your life currently, what are you currently healing in your life?
Oh my goodness. Okay, fine. I'll tell you.
You're funny.
You got me. So I have a 7-year-old munchkin and a 14-year-old little rebel inside of me that have been really struggling with love and being in a healthy, nurturing, conscious relationship. And so I'm really navigating a lot of patience and gentleness with myself when that deep yearning for partnership is forward, and everything inside of me wants to reach out and latch on to a man and pull him in and woo him with my charm. In really just sort of honoring that right now, it's about me and rebuilding and trusting myself and healing sort of the trauma from the experiences with men that I've had recently. And so it's a really big commitment to sort of being my best mother, truly. I don't know that I felt that growing up, that I felt mothered. So it's learning how to be with myself when I'm navigating insecurity. So
beautiful.
Thank you so much. I feel like this episode specifically has had a real magic with the shares and the vulnerability that we've expressed. So I feel like it's going to read to the audience for sure. I want to acknowledge you. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
I want to share something real quick because Reiki is becoming more and more modernized or more and more popular, and you can even find it in hospitals now. And it's like really, it's a normal, like it's becoming to be the norm in the new generation. And when I see my daughter, 2 years old and already starting doing Reiki, and she has this little train station, and she puts her animals into this train station, and it's her like little healing channel, her little healing machine, and she's like clicking on some dots or some buttons on the top, and then she does a Reiki on them, and then after a while she's like, all done, and then they come back out and they're like, all healed, and then it's the next one. And I'm like thinking, oh wow, like this is probably gonna be the future medicine is going to be like something like machines, or in combination with people, energetic healing, sound healing, color healing, like all the things that are gentle, like a gentle medicine.
Yeah. And I would also even expand that into, I call myself an independent parent instead of a single parent. So I'm an independent parent. I have a 13-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter. And my son is incredibly intuitive. And like he was just sharing with me that he has a spirit that visits him in his bedroom, and it's a female, and she has long hair and she wears a white gown, but he can't see her face. And he and I talk a lot about, well, what would that be like for you if you channeled what she had to say or drew her, right? Because I feel like that's like a whole other realm that we haven't even begun to tap into, is sort of what those on the other side, or these light orbs, like what do they have to say about our process and where we're at? There's a lot of information there. There's a reason why, right? They're here. And there's a reason why some of us have that gift of sight and connection. So I think there's a lot to sort of that hasn't even been exploited yet, or even, like you were saying, like maybe it does become so modern and hip that it's actually easier than what we think it is. There's not as many barriers to receiving healing, but yeah there's a whole other realm.
And that's what you just touched on. That's really potent, because I want to say it's called the 103 monkey experiment or something like that. It's because when like one monkey is like I think there was like a scientific experiment. I'm gonna link it to the description, and the listener can read it all through. But it was like something where the monkey's food was always thrown into the sand, and then they never really liked eating it. And then one monkey started putting it into the river and washing it, and then so he taught the other monkeys, and everybody kind of learned it. And then there were monkeys on other islands that started doing the same thing, even though they never connected and they never knew each other. And it's this like consciousness grid that we're all connected with. And the more people that are just accepting that we have these healing powers within ourselves, that we are able to heal ourselves, that we are able to help others heal, the more it is possible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the more transparent we are, right? The more we take away sort of that barrier of fear of, if I say that, for example, when my partner took his life, that he came to me that night and tried to comfort me, right? And I heard him saying, I'm so sorry, baby, like, don't be sad, right? Like, the fact that I was so open about that actually supported my process in healing, instead of feeling like, well, this is too weird now, like I need to keep this close to me. Instead, it was like, oh, no. Like, this is actually what's happening. He has not transitioned. He's roaming. He's seeking, he's seeking the light. And so, from that place, like I had people showing up that I didn't even ever imagine showing up with support, who had information, right, to better assist him in transitioning, or to support me in actually starting to create boundaries so that I didn't feel responsible now for his afterlife care. right? That I was able to let that go. I mean, there was just so much learning that came from me just being transparent and saying, like, this is my experience. I don't know what it means, and I don't want it to go away. This is what's happening.
Oh my gosh, you're just like speaking out of my heart right now, like literally, because I was just this like Scorpio season, Mercury retrograde through Scorpio, which just finally went direct while we were recording this. Or like today. Yeah, finally, but it was like so potent for me too, because I also a student of mine and a friend of mine from my mastermind group crossed over through an accident, and I started channeling her, and I really started to like deeply connect it with my mediumship abilities that I never really, well, I wouldn't say never, but for a long time I was holding them in, and I didn't want to like tell people, because I was like, I don't want to seem weird, or I want to make sure it's real, it's true. So I always like ask for like some sort of proof from them, you know, because I didn't have the confidence to just be like, this is what it is. Like, this is what I experienced. You take it or leave it. Like, this is just what happened. And so this was really one of the times where I shared that in the group, not just with like one-on-one person when I like connected with a loved one who has crossed over, but like within a whole group of people, and like sharing openly about it, and sharing with my partner, and just being so authentically and just sharing. And since then, so many more things have happened, because that it's like a commitment that we make to the universe of like, yeah, I believe. I step into this thing, and I trust, and I believe, and this is my truth. This is real. And as soon as we say that, all these new portals are opening up.
And those doors, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add on as well that I love that we're sharing these experiences, and I can imagine so many people in the audience that are listening, hearing these stories, that are like, oh, what? But in the name of transparency, during my mom's first memorial service out here in Las Vegas, my sister was transparent and shared her experience where, so my mom passed in a cancer treatment hospital in Salt Lake City, Utah. So my dad and I were there, and my sister was here in Las Vegas, and we told her, hey, things are getting pretty wild. You better fly out here, emergency. And she she missed her first flight, and then she went to hop on a second flight, and my mom had already passed at that point. So I called her, and right before she was getting on the flight, I was like wanting to tell her, like, Mom passed away. Do you want to make it down here or whatever? Like, don't feel like you have to be in that big a hurry or whatever. And she had a feeling and told me, don't say anything. I'm getting on the flight right now. I'm going to be there. And she started having a panic attack on the flight. Like, I have to get there before she goes, and starting to talk to my mom and saying, don't leave without me. Don't leave without me. I have to be there with you. And she said my mom's energy came to her clear as day and said, I'm not even there anymore. It's okay. It's okay. Like, I'm here with you now. I'm going to be here with you, but I'm not there anymore, and it's okay. Wow. And you don't feel like you have to rush to me so, fervently.
Wow.
I really want to underline that being transparent, because these are the things, just like Hannah was saying, that you can feel like you don't want to be the center of attention, or you don't want all eyes on you, or you don't want people to judge you, or to feel weird, or the gossip to come, or whatever. But by us sharing these stories, if anything, we get people curious. And if anything, we give people a little slice of what our reality has looked like. And if they're able to understand that they are us and we are them, and what's available to us is available to them, then maybe they can have a more open sense of curiosity around, like, wow, things can happen to me that are otherworldly and don't make sense here in the physical world.
Yeah. Well, and a big part of that too is giving ourselves the permission to speak our truth. right? And to receive our truth, which is, so the payout of that is peace. The alternative of not speaking who you are or receiving that is that you're falsifying, right? You're not authentic. So it's bigger than sharing. It's all about being. It's all about really holding ourselves in that space of, right, I know and I am. Just using that language. So, like, for example, I very rarely now say it feels like, because that was another sort of cop out. It was like, I'm just going to throw this out there. It feels like. And instead, now I say, I feel, I'm sensing what I know is. That's the game changer. And from that space, we actually give other people the same permission to be just as authentic, because we're constantly intuiting. It's happening whether or not we agree to it, right? And so the fact that we're showing up from this place of such transparency, it's gifting other people in our sphere the space to be authentic. Like my son, for example, it gives him the space to be exactly who he is without apologies. We talk all the time. He'll be like, yeah, mom, like I got up to use the bathroom the other night, and he's like, and I looked down the stairs and there were 3 of them. And he was like, they scared me. And I'm like, yeah, that would spook me out too, buddy. Right? Or that when he's at school, they talk to him and he's navigating. So from that place, then for me, I was like, perfect. I know just what to do. Now I can support. So I put him in front of a healer who was able to work with him, who was able to say, you know, look, buddy, like we can turn this off, or you can learn a different way to really communicate with them so that you feel safe and that you have control around it, right? And he chose to communicate with them. And so without that, who knows what he would have been navigating? Like inside of himself. Imagine, like, I know what that was for me. That was pain to not be who I was because my parents or my friends or my whoever, because nobody talked about it. So transparency, man, it really comes with a lot of freedom, actually.
Yes, and I love that you so support your son in that, because I think this is literally the reason for a lot of mental illnesses, because people do have these psychic abilities, don't know what to do with it, talk to someone about it who has no clue about it, usually the Western medical system, which then prescribes medication, says you have hallucinations, you're hearing voices that aren't there, you are sick. And then it just starts like,
here's an antipsychotic.
Here's medication, block it out. And then the people call themselves, I am sick, I am mentally ill. And then it just, creates the spiral into, manifesting more of that into their lives. So it is so important to know that these things are real, and when we allow ourselves to speak our truth and tune into that, they become even more real.
Yeah. So find your people, right? It's like put yourself around people that get it, that see you.
Yeah. I think we have a few questions from the audience, right? We asked if they have any questions from you, so.
Ooh.
Yeah, and actually I got numerous people asking, can anyone be a Reiki healer, which I feel like we touched on inside of here, but the answer is yes. It's a big yes, everybody.
Yeah. That is a hard yes. And please do it. Like, please, because we just need Mother Earth, like, takes such a big hit, and it's like we just have so many people walking around with pain. So it's like, do it.
And the next one, which I feel like we also touched on inside of here, was how can I implement this healing into my daily life? Simple pieces of this healing. I loved how you touched on earlier. What did you say about reaching out and just noticing one thing, just being given one thing at a time? I can't remember. Do you remember what you said? Give us an answer.
I know I'm like recapping. I don't I don't remember, but if I'm going to answer that question, so that was about implementing it, like implementing the Reiki into, yeah, and so the Reiki itself, because the intention is love, it gives you the space to actually slow it way down and to really sort of tune into you first before you start tending to others. So in other words, Reiki supports you in shifting away from caretaking and actually showing up in your life as the nurturer. That's the gift of it. So that you no longer carry the burden of responsibility of other people's process or outcome. It's really that significant.
Wow, I feel like that was deep medicine for me right now. Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I feel like so many of us feel the call inside of ourselves to like go within, do the practices. Recently, I've been having a lot of shadow work coming up for me, and, you know, asking what archetype is it that I'm to draw in that will help me with this. And I got the cave. Just literally like go within. And I know it. I know it. I wake up every morning saying, yes, let's start implementing this. Let's start carving out the time. Let's start doing the morning practices and sitting with myself a little more consciously, because as strong as my attention is in the beginning of the day, like I definitely fall prey to busying myself as soon as I wake up and, you know, continuing the rest of the day like that. And I think this is where a lot of people are.
Yeah. And so at that point, it's like, just own that you're making a choice, right? To either not make it a priority or to sort of create distraction. And again, there's no judgment, right? It's just choices. And there is a point, you know, when you do commit to sort of doing this work, when you commit to the self-healing, it becomes incredibly infectious to the point where like you can't get enough of it. Just like it is when you're creating the discipline around moving your body, right? There's always that like threshold where you're like, do I really want to do this? Because this kind of sucks. Like this really hurts. And like who signs up for this? Nobody. Right. And then there's the hump. And it's like, as soon as you get up over it, you're like, damn, I'm on fire. Like this body is rocking and it's taking me places I didn't even know I could go. It's the same thing when you commit to self-healing. So for me, the discipline became, you know, the kiddos went to bed by 7:30. That was non-negotiable, right? And I would gather, oh my gosh, I would gather like crystals and candles and oracle cards and boxes, plural, of tissues and journals, because who knew which journal I wanted to journal in. And I would just give myself the space to come undone without apologies. And what I actually found, and I was scared, I was so scared. I had never been shown that before. And what I found actually was that I began to notice that the room I was in felt incredibly stuffy, right? And then I started to sense and feel, and I could feel them as in my community, gathering around me and touching me, right? My shoulders, my head, you know? And then from there, I felt inspired to just kind of write, like, well, what would happen if I just, you know, sat with myself, offered myself Reiki, cried a good cry, right? Really come undone, and then write about it. And to this day, when I go back, it's like the information that came, I wrote it, but it was not from me. Right? And we call it our higher self, and it feels bigger than that. It feels bigger than that. And so then, you know, it was such a sacred discipline for me. So then it was like the journaling would happen. I would throw away the tissues. I made sure to take a shower to kind of wash away whatever was hanging out in my aura. And then I would have like the sweetest sleep ever. Because it's like mothering ourselves means being with ourselves in those moments of discomfort. When we're in pain, it's not running away. It's actually just being there. So besides that, it's like the Reiki is always a part of your thing, your MO, because with a Reiki 1 attunement, it's like everything gets turned on to the first degree. If you imagine like a 3-way light switch, you're turning it up. You're not getting anything new. It's just that everything gets crisper. You see things in a way that you're like, you knew before and there was a question mark. Now it's like you just gently erase the question mark and you can just say softly, I know. Right? So it's a very sweet way of kind of doing the work and integrating into your life in a way that is so authentic and so just so supportive, right, and loving.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And it's so, let's get to the special gift that you have for our listeners.
Yes. So I would love to gift sort of the first 10 listeners a complimentary 30-minute life session reading. So I am also a medium and I see pathways for people who are in transition. And so, I would love to connect with, whoever is out there. It's really sort of seeking some support and guidance in kind of their what's next sort of steps. So you can reach out through my website or, email too. I'm not sure if you guys put that out there or do you want me to say that now or
yeah, we're gonna put all the link into the description too, to your website. So so the first 10 people that are gonna message you are gonna get a free live session reading.
Yay.
And
yeah.
So what else do you have to offer? I know we were talking a little bit about the online workshop that.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. So I just actually sort of launched I don't know how else to sort of frame it, but it's a live virtual certification class. And so it's, I offer them in all 3 degrees. So from Reiki 1 up until mastership, where you get certified and attuned. And everybody receives like a really sweet nurturing soul care package to kind of support you in navigating the learnings. So right now there's a discount on those and I think it's like $285 and then it goes up to $325 in February. So right now there's a little bit of a discount, but I'm super excited to kind of have a collective group to get certified online.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
So in closing, we have a few questions that we ask every guest. And before we hop into those, I'm just so in love with everything that's inside of this episode. I just looked at my time. This is probably going to be the longest episode we've had.
I have a lot to say.
Of which I'm super excited because, some people like the shorter podcasts, but I personally love the longer ones. And I know a lot of people who love longer, sort of deeper dialogue and slowing things down and really talking about a ton of stuff. So once again, we really just want to offer so much gratitude to you. And with that being said, what does sacred mean to you?
Ooh, well, sacred feels juicy and it feels really intimate and it feels mine. It feels it feels very sort of community based and it's everything that I intend to sort of cultivate, to have a very sort of sacred, juicy, intimate experience with life that is so uniquely mine.
Sacred, juicy, intimate experience with life. The new definition of sacred.
So I know we were touching on it a little bit, but what does having a sacred sister mean to you?
Oh, well, having a sacred sister is really sweet, right? It's like being sort of the sister, like as a collective, where it's like you really just get to connect with your lady tribe, your woman tribe, and really sort of lean into healing the karma and the lineage around staying small and staying quiet, and really cultivating an uprising, like really supporting this kind of, it's not just even up leveling, it's like we're all the bamboo, we've weathered a lot, and we are hella sustainable, and so now it's like we get to kind of like bend right back up and really share our core, because we're pretty strong. So that's what that means to me.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah.
And what are 3 ways that you turn something normal or mundane into something magical or sacred?
Oh goodness. Okay, so what you should know about me is that I have a Sagittarius moon who can be really, really, really sort of impulsive and fiery and playful. And my Venus is in Leo, so I love everything to be a luxury. So really, I'm like, from bed to table, I can bedazzle anything and make it exciting and like fiery. But I'm always, I'm an Uber connector, Uber, and I like to get up into people's spaces, not in an awkward, uncomfortable way. Right? I'm not like, but, I'm like, oh my God, I would eat you, I'd spread you out. You guys are so cute, because it's true. It's like, that to me is like making any sort of mundane experience yummy. It's like language, it's like, oh yeah. I don't think I answered your question at all, but
I was like, so is that the first way or the third way?
It's all the ways all the time. I cannot choose.
No, that's awesome. Thank you. I'm Sagittarius moon too, so I totally know what you mean.
Oh my gosh, we are on the hunt for truth. I tell you, it's like,
absolutely. I
And
never knew. Go ahead.
I just wanted to chime in that I'm right on the cusp between Scorpio and Sagittarius. So
ooh, it's
are
big.
you? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm on 29 degrees Scorpio.
Oh,
Well, my Mars is in Scorpio, so I've got a lot of passion. I tell you, I'm like a whole lot of woman packed into this dainty little frame, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself half the time, but like.
Well, from my perspective, yeah, you're running the marathon, and from my perspective, you are doing a whole lot of good things with
Thank
that
you.
little dainty frame of yours.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Wow. It has been such a pleasure sitting down to speak with you. This is longer than anticipated, but I'm really happy about every single second of it. All the munchkins and all of that in between eat you up.
Yeah. Just a little nibble. Just a little.
You're too funny.
Oh my God.
So where can our audience find you?
Okay. I'm like crying. I'm laughing so hard. This
Me
is so
too.
good. Cultivated play. It's so good. So you can find me at jenniferacabot.com. I think you can even just get there by Jennifer Cabot. I live in Maine, so maybe if you just Googled Reiki Master Maine, I'm sure I would pop up. We're pretty limited here, so I'm sure it'd be a great way to get in. But yeah, definitely that's a good place to start. I'm hopping around on Instagram. And
can you list your Instagram handle? We're also going to list everything in the show notes, but you can just let anybody know.
Okay. All right. So I'll send that to you then. That's fine. Yeah. So I think it's like Jennifer Ann Coaching is my Instagram thing. So, but I'll get that out to you.
Perfect. Awesome. Is there some other stuff that you want to say, Miss Hannah?
No, I just want to really say, just such deep gratitude. I had so much fun in this whole conversation. I just loved how we touched on so much. Like, we went really deep into the healing powers on so many different levels. And I really hope that this sparked some flames in our listeners that is like, oh, yes, I want to dive into this. So if you are listening and you really feel the call, you know who to reach out to, and trust yourself. Trust yourself.
Trust yourself. Should that be the action guide?
Yeah, right?
At the end of every episode, we give an action guide to our listeners, and just now I was like, ooh, are we about to log off without doing an action guide? And it was like, no.
So good. What do you think, like, Jen, do you have anything, like, what is like an action guide that you would give to the audience?
To be honest, right now, I'm feeling so expanded that I'm like, I can't even gather the words right now to be able to answer that question. Like, I'm just being completely transparent that I'm like, ooh. Trust yourself is a good one. That's a good one. Trust has a lot of energy around it, actually. Something about boundaries. We got to be able to nail the boundary piece too, though.
We have an entire episode on boundaries as well too, talking a ton about boundaries and their importance, how to implement them, what they're good for.
Yeah, that's good, because it's important. There's no way that you can grow without having any sort of boundary, because then you're welcoming in all the riffraff. You're just absorbing. So I love that.
For the ride.
Yeah. Trust yourself with discernment.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, wait.
Like, I feel like all of us are like up in a cloud right now, bumping into each other, like doing. Okay, so trust yourself with discernment. In the moments that you notice that you are about to not trust yourself, or that you have a thought about not trusting yourself, discern what that's about. Ask yourself, question yourself, what's going on here? Is this a belief system? Is this an old program? Why is it that I'm feeling this way? And see if you can dive a little deeper into that. Really give yourself time to sit with it.
Yeah, I love that. I have so much to share. So this I'm like, done. Yeah.
Go ahead. I was going to say, you can.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
So,
okay, cool. I'm like, are you gonna share or not? Are you like?
No, because right now, like, I really truly am out of body, because I am so expanded into my consciousness that I need to get back in this vessel. So yeah, that was really, really sweet, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your wisdom and sharing so vulnerable with us. And I had a lot of fun, and thank you.
And if you guys want to do like a follow-up, because I know there was a ton of information that was in this episode, and if you're getting the sense that there needs to be a follow-up to some of it, because it was like Reiki Plus, right? It was like Reiki 2.0.
Yeah.
And I would be more than happy to jump on another call to support that. So, you guys can sit with however that resonates with you. But
yeah, I feel like I would love to talk more about the mediumship part, and people have crossed over and how to connect with them. So
yeah, maybe later in the season we'll be having another episode.
Okay, keep me posted. But it was so lovely to see you guys. Lots of love for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. So much fun. Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure sitting with you today and meeting you.
You too, lovey. You too. All right.
Bye, Munchkin.